This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
We got a new world champion.
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby. It's the real deal, baby.
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up, though, man? It is another Thursday. This is Knockouts and 3 Counts, and we all know what you're really here to talk about. So, before we talk with all the fights with Matt Frendo, first and foremost, who's going to win the finals tonight?
I think you're gonna
win the finals.
The Warriors are gonna
win tonight.
Tonight, the Boston Celtics are gonna win.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want to hear.
I think you're gonna see a lot of fouling. Draymond Green will probably foul out. It's better for the NBA if it goes 7. So I think we're gonna see some hometown loving for Boston. Celtics tonight, but ultimately Warriors will win in Game 7 at home.
If it goes 7, I'm happy.
That's what
it's been a good series. It's been fun to watch. This
whole playoffs has been great, dude.
Yeah. They have.
All right, Chris in the comments. Let's go Boston.
The playoffs have been genuinely entertaining, but I agree with you guys. I just want to see a Game 7, and I hope Boston's able to keep the kind of home field advantage going, I guess you could say, that we've seen so far in the finals. So
I think they will. I think they're definitely going to. So,
I mean, the story of this whole. Go ahead.
It's just always better too when win or lose, no matter what the case is. It's always better when the championship winning team wins in their hometown, even if it's not the team that you wanted to win. It's just that much better instead of seeing a camera of some other town and shit that everybody's on site going crazy. It's just a different experience.
Yeah, I can imagine too, like being like a real fan of them, being there Game 7 at home. I mean, you're not going to tell me Chef Curry's not pulling it out at home if it's a Game 7 in the finals. Curry goes crazy for 38 or more, it's a done deal.
Look, I'm not going to hold you up, dude. There's not really too many people that I honestly could say that I would want the ball in their hands in Game 7 in the fourth quarter than Chef Curry, like you said. But, I mean, I'm just saying. Do you got any parlays on this game? I know you style pretty good over there on DraftKings and shit. Are you running any parlays today?
I've seen that face.
I got, boys.
I thought so.
I'm either retiring tonight or I'm working the rest of my life. One of the two. I got a little too much action out there tonight, so. But I know Curry's not gonna let me down, so he's got my back.
All right.
Any interesting picks out there?
So for tonight, I actually have. Here's what I know is gonna hit. Okay, I put $100 on Curry for 27 points or more. Jordan Poole for 10.5 or more. This is a parlay.
That sounds like a good one.
Andrew Wiggins for 8 or more rebounds, and Draymond Green for 6 or more assists. The $100 is a $1,200 payout. So,
hot damn, that's what I'm talking about. I need to start asking Frendo to be like the sports book. Fuck Yanni the Greek. I'm just gonna start coming to Frendo first. Hot damn.
Yeah, man, it's an addiction. For
somebody pushing for a Game 7. It sure seems like we got a lot riding on them Warriors tonight, huh?
Yeah, to be honest, I hit a few. I hit a nice bet on Game 1. I think it was Game 4, and I rarely put anything on the Celtics just because I've watched the Warriors pretty much all year. So I like Steph Curry, but I'm a huge Jordan Poole fan. I'm a Michigan Wolverine guy. Yeah. So he was in Michigan. I follow him really heavily. Duncan Robinson, all the guys. Tim Hardaway, the guys from Michigan that do well. I follow them pretty heavily. So I've watched a lot of their games, and Jordan Poole usually is the deciding factor on if I hit or if I cry myself to sleep. So. I've got confidence in him tonight, though. I'm going to put my jersey on here in a little bit.
I saw that, man. Happy belated birthday and all that good stuff. I saw Ashley hooked you up with the jersey and all that stuff, man. You was looking good for Dirty 30, huh?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she did it. She did her thing for sure. I've been needing some new shoes. I've been crying about, Jordan Poole's won me so much money. I told her I should be buying a jersey every week just to help his sales, his little kickback he gets. So he personally, the last one I won, actually, the last thing I needed it was a 5-leg parlay. The last thing I needed was Jordan Poole had to hit me 2 threes, and it was game 4. I think he didn't have a 3 yet. They were down by 4 or 5. He hits one with 3 or 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So he's got one. They take him out. I'm like, fuck, he's out for the rest of the game. Thankfully, Draymond fouls out. He comes back in. He hits the second 3 with 16 seconds left in the game. And I think it was a $1,400 or $1,500 hit on a $100 parlay. So I'm going to buy Jordan Poole jerseys till the day I die at this point.
Hey, I'm not mad at that because the last parlay that I ran was for UFC 275, and as soon as Joanna took a nap, there went my parlay. Yeah, man, it was it was very devastating. But you know what else is going to be devastating, man? You guys have got some badass fights lined up at Lights Out, man. So first of all, how the hell did we get back here to Lights Out being back around, man? Because, I mean, Lights Out was doing pretty good, and you're going to get to be the last show at the Deltaplex, too. I mean, tell me a little bit about Lights Out making its return to the Michigan MMA scene.
Yeah. I've been working with XFC since COVID. Before COVID started, I was having the most fun I've ever had doing this. It was the event where Kenny main evented against Robert Hale. Yep. I had all types of really good fighters on the card. The crowd was amazing. It was one of the better attended shows that the Deltaplex has had in terms of MMA. So I had all types of momentum, and then COVID hit. Obviously, it stopped everybody's world essentially. So it's in the last 2 years, like I said, I've been just working with XFC, and then with everything that happened with that and a combination of the Deltaplex getting ready to close, I couldn't let the last show be not a Lights Out show. I had to do it. So I was able to put it together, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Or is going to turn out, I should say. I've got some really good fights in the card that I was really happy to put on. It's a bittersweet thing. I've been doing shows at the Deltaplex for five or 6 years, I think, with my own company and various companies that I've worked with. So, it's very sad to see it finally close. But I'm happy for Joel, the owner. I know he had to have got a pretty good deal for everything to work out. So, he's been a huge help with me in my career. Everybody at the Deltaplex really has. Those guys. It's easy to see the Deltaplex and just think they're just the venue we do shows at, but really, fighters and fans don't even know there was multiple shows when I was working with KOP and even with Lights Out, where things like we lost money and we didn't have enough money to pay everybody, and the Deltaplex kicked in money to help make sure everybody got paid. Moving certain other events that they had booked around so that we could get that weekend so that we could have certain guys fight. Like, those guys are responsible for a lot of shows even being able to happen. So definitely sad that they're kind of coming to an end with that. But I've got some things in the works with some of those guys. So we'll see how everything plays out, but that's just kind of how we ended up here. Just a lot of moving parts going on, but here we are 9 days before the event, and I can't wait till fight night gets here.
Why was it COVID that took out the Deltaplex? Like, why are they closing down?
I think it's a lot of things. I think I know in the press release, Joel had said, the operating costs because of COVID, things like that obviously has hurt, businesses around the world.
Yeah.
I think I can't really speak for him. I know that, he's owned the Deltaplex. I don't know exactly how long, but he's been in business his whole life really, and, he's got grandkids and I'm sure he probably just wants to enjoy his wife and his life, so, I'm sure he'll still stay involved in something. I can't imagine just knowing him. I don't think he could handle just like sitting home and being done with everything forever. So I'm sure he'll do something, but if he doesn't, then I congratulate him on the life he's been able to live and what he's been able to do in business. And I couldn't be happier for him if he's done with everything.
Can't be mad at that. Go ahead, Corey.
Do you know if there's any future plans for the site?
So I do, but I don't think I'm not allowed to say anything. I don't know that they've made that public yet. So I just had kind of heard a couple of things of what was happening, and I think I've had those confirmed since, but I don't think it's public yet. So I really can't say too much about it. But I can tell you it's not going to be a venue. It's not going to be like a entertainment venue anymore. So
Oh, okay.
So it's just going to be kind of something completely different from what I've heard. So
That's unfortunate.
What a bummer, though. But I gotta say, the Deltaplex, I've gotten to go to a few fights there. Definitely a fun place to be. If you guys haven't already gotten your tickets yet, make sure you get these tickets. Come check out Lights Out. Check out the last event that's going down at the Deltaplex in Grand Rapids, because I, for one, am looking forward to seeing what's going to go down in this cage. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, man. Obviously this card's had a little bit of a different look than when it started. Mondo went down. You've now got past guest of the show, Austin Bashi, in the main event, I believe. Like I said, I'm still looking forward to seeing some guys throw down. Another past guest of the show, Calvin Harbaugh, is hopping right back in the cage right after a fight, a week ago. So how are you feeling with the rest of the fights on this card? What fights are you most looking forward to, and what fights do you think could be sleepers for those who are kind of still on the fence getting tickets?
So yeah, the card has changed. When I decided to do the show, I had kind of had some commitments from guys like Brett Martin, Kenny Cross, Mondo, Bashi, like some of the bigger name guys around. So that's all I needed to hear. We could do an event with just those four guys with good matchups, and that's worth the price of admission alone. And as it kind of progressed, Kenny had signed with a new management company, and I know they've got some pretty big things worked out for him. So it wasn't the smartest idea to take a really tough fight on the regional level. So, it was best for him to kind of hold off and wait until, he gets kind of what's coming with that. Brett had some prior obligations that he was committed to that we didn't realize was the same weekend. So that kind of eliminated him as well. And then now, Mondo suffering the shoulder injury, taking him off the card a couple of days ago. So the card looked much different, 4 to 6 weeks ago. But what actually is like exciting me is I'm still pumped for every single one of these fights. I tried to focus so much on the amateurs this card. I had told James Lynch earlier, when Michigan went sanctioned, amateurs got wiped out. Because it's the same. An amateur has the same requirements and costs as a pro does. So everybody that was anything like, had wanted to do anything with fighting, there was an amateur just went pro. So there was literally like no amateurs left at all when we went sanctioned. I think it was in 2014 or 2015. And then we started building momentum up with those guys, and then COVID hit, and then everybody got wiped out again because they just stopped fighting. They stopped training. Gyms were closed for so long. So pros, not that they need less help, but amateurs need something to like get them back in it. There has to be something around. Like that's how, without shows like us building these guys up, there is no guys that come through Michigan. Like there's no Cody Stamans, there's no Jamal Hills. Like there has to be shows to be able to help get these guys to where they want to go. So we have, I think it's either 7 or 8 really good amateur fights, guys that are debut guys or who are very young into their career still. They might not be the most recognizable names right now, but they're going to be. Like, these guys are all killers. So you're going to see like a whole new wave of talent that nobody really knows about yet come through. And then at the same time, I've got some guys on the card like Bo Vincent and Mickey Marsack, who are older into their career, and it's not like they're like some young unknown guys, but they're exciting guys. They're guys that go in there and they just throw hands. You're not going to see a bunch of grappling with that. You're going to see them looking for finishes. We've got, the main event now is Austin Bashi and Chris SanJose. Both of those guys were mentioned in the MMA Junkie article of guys that basically need one more win. They're potentially going to be in the UFC. I think Chris might be slightly closer. He's a little older, has a little bit better of a record, a little bit more experience. So regardless, I think whoever wins that fight is going to get a serious look from UFC on whether it's Contender Series or maybe just like a straight up, last minute fight opportunity that they can step in for. So anytime you can have fights like that in your card on the regional level, like, it's a huge deal. When we had Mondo and Sean McPadden, and then this as well, and I had those 4 high level of guys in my main and co-main event, like, I was on cloud 9. Like, that's very rarely do you get a card on the regional level that has guys that are that close to the UFC on the same card. So it's unfortunate what happened with some of the drops and some of the other things, but at the same time, like, I'm still so excited about the card that not that I forgot about the things that aren't happening, but it makes it a little easier to stomach that those guys aren't on the card now. So there's gonna be a lot of people at the show, and there's gonna be some really good fights with some guys that aren't recognizable yet, but they're gonna be soon.
I mean, as when you were playing the matchmaker role for XFC and now doing the promoter role, and as you're doing it for yourself essentially with Lights Out, how do you balance playing the fights fall out, rolling with the punches essentially? Like, to your point, you got to always build anticipation and be excited for the fights that are still presented, but it's just got to be a constant thing where it's like, to your point, you have commitments and then those fall out or something like that. It's just it's got to be fun rolling with those punches.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a roller coaster. Fight week especially, I always say fight week is like the most beautiful, dirty, disgusting, amazing time, because shit will happen on fight week that should never happen. Guys dropping out, guys getting hurt, asking for weight changes, missing flights, missing weight. Like, there's so many crazy things that happen. When I was working with XFC the past couple of years, I was mostly just matchmaking. So it's been really weird, kind of like back in the saddle, having to do everything, because licenses and running tickets around and doing stuff like that. I haven't done it since COVID, since COVID started. So it's been a couple of years since I've really done this. And I have this weird anxiety about, I think I'm forgetting something. I don't know. If I call Linda almost every day and I'm like, hey, did I forget this? Am I good? Like, I'm just, it's been so long that I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. And it's causing like massive anxiety with me, because I don't want to just fuck something up and be the reason why the show got canceled or something like that. So it's been a little nerve wracking, but it really is fun. It's extremely stressful. That's why, the little gray hair up there, partly kids, mostly MMA events. So, but at the end of the day, like, I really do love it. So it doesn't make it quite as bad when you actually love what you're doing.
Look, man, all I know is this card's still shaping out to be some good fights. You mentioned the stakes that are on the line with Austin Bashi in them. For those of you who have been following us for a while, Austin's past guest of the show, and I mean, me being a Team Kaiki guy, I've gotten to see Austin come up through the amateurs and all that stuff. And so to see him going in there, like, especially with his last fight, coming off his last fight for Shamrock FC, man, like, that guy was so sure that he was about to just run through Austin, and pretty much it's been the same story as all of his professional fights so far, whether it be in XFC or for Shamrock FC so far, in that he's looked unstoppable so far, whether it be on the wrestling. And the craziest thing is he's used his wrestling so much in the fights that we've seen thus far in his submissions and things dude, his tie in things. Like if he stands there and starts rifling off kicks and knees and elbows, he's got a lot of different ways he can win this fight. And like you mentioned with his opponent, Chris SanJose, he's a little bit more seasoned. They're both right on that cusp. I think this fight could be the fight that if Austin goes in there and gets another impressive win like he's been getting in his previous fights, that would be as blue chip of a guy for the UFC to want to go sign as a young buck like himself, man. So that fight is definitely one to be interesting. But what do you think, other than the experience difference, do you think is going to be the biggest step up for Austin in this fight?
Well, I think Chris is definitely the toughest opponent that he's faced. His opponent at Shamrock is a good opponent as well. The pedigree Chris has, the experience, obviously, just the resume he has with guys he's beat, the level he's been on. He's not going to see anything that's going to surprise, or that's going to, he's not going to be thrown off by Austin's pressure or, like Austin's wrestling. He's seen it all. And that's something that, thank you. That's something that you can't really, underestimate with that. Austin and some of the fights with XFC, his pace and his pressure, I think surprised a lot of guys. He's always moving forward. He's always in your face, whether he's hitting you with strikes or whether you're under him on the ground, he's smothering. And it's been very effective. He's never really had to strike so much because he's been able to do what he wants with people. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Chris is going to be ready for everything that he's got. So I think that's what excites me is I think – sorry, guys. I think the most exciting part about so my screen blanked out.
Oh, good.
I think the most exciting part about this was we're going to see a side of Austin that we've never had to see before because he's always just been able to do what he needs to do. So, I think as far as Austin's opponents go, and probably Chris, both of them, these guys are their toughest opponents they've ever faced. So anytime you can do that, it ups the stakes and makes it more exciting for me to put the fight on, but also the fans as well, because those guys are aware, their families, their friends, their training partners, they all understand who they're fighting. And they know that this is going to be the toughest guys they've ever had to go against. So it should be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
And to your point, both of them are just kind of steps away. They're knocking at the door essentially of, real, whether it is UFC, Bellator, or even PFL, they're knocking at the door of that upper level, promotion. So, great main event, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, before we get on to, we've mentioned XFC a bunch, and I've definitely got a few questions as far as XFC goes. But with that being said, one of the things that really sticks out to me with Lights Out, you mentioned, all the fights you were running, before pandemic and all those things. Like, you guys have had, you guys and you specifically with not only Lights Out and the other promotions that you've worked with. We've mentioned Kenny Cross, you mentioned a guy like Mondo, you mentioned a guy like Brett, you've got so many guys that now, and then, you got Jamal Hill and all these guys that are coming up out of Michigan to go to the UFC and all those things. What do you think the legacy of Lights Out will be should you decide that after this event you don't want to run another fight? Because there's been so many high-level guys that have come through there, even in a short time. What do you think the legacy of Lights Out, leaves with this being the last event at the Deltaplex?
Well, to be honest, it's almost like an end of an era with the Deltaplex. It's even when I was with KOP, we always had the same kind of mindset that we never want to do like small shows. We didn't want to do gymnasiums or convention centers or, hotels. Like we wanted to do arena shows because it makes the event feel so much bigger. You walk in and the atmosphere is crazy in there, so many awesome memories of crazy things that have happened and how loud that place gets. And just the lights and the feel of it. It's just a different feel than when you walk into a smaller show. So, the legacy I would like to think would be, that we always did bigger events. We always, tried to make it as big as possible for not only the fighters, but the fans. Being able to help some of those guys get to the UFC, like we booked Cody Stamen a lot in Grand Rapids. We booked Jamal a lot. You just had guys like Kenny, Mondo, Bashi, Brett, Cody Brundage, guys like that we work with a lot. And it's obviously in the sport I want to make money, but at the same time, like, I really fucking love seeing these guys get to where they want to go. I mean, these guys are living their dreams. I was living my dream too. And my dreams changed a little bit, but these have been able to help these guys. It's incredible. And these are guys that I could call at any time, and they're friends for life, so it's the legacy. I want people to remember, that we did everything we could to provide a platform for these guys to launch their careers into where they wanted to go. And I made a ton of friends and people that I can, kind of go through this crazy life together with. And it's been amazing.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm looking forward to it. Like we said, if you haven't already done so, get your tickets for Lights Out coming down in Grand Rapids. Let everybody know where they can get tickets one more time before we get on to some other stuff.
Yeah, you can on our Facebook page, we're going to be hammering out all types of posts over the next 9 days. The ticket link will be posted in there. It's etix.com. I think it's /LOC8. You can get them at the door. You can call the box office. You can go to the Deltaplex anytime and get them. We'll definitely have plenty of tickets available at the day of the show. So whatever you got to do, come out. We'll have a pay-per-view stream as well. I'm actually signing a deal with Spectation Sports today to produce a couple events. So you'll be able to check it out one way or another if you can't be there in person.
Hell yeah, man. I saw the Spectation Sports thing with WXC a couple last week and all that too. So it's going to be cool that everybody can check it out, whether you can make it out to Grand Rapids or not. But like I was saying, man, I had to ask because any of you guys that have been following the channel know that, we were at all the XFC events that were here in Michigan and all that stuff. And you've mentioned, your role as matchmaker with XFC. So before we get to all the bullshit that everybody's expecting us to talk about, tell me about, you getting to work with them. Like, what were your initial thoughts with working with them and getting to be matchmaker for somebody who on the outside, I mean, everything was on, a major network, like you said, it looked good for Kenny and everybody that was on there. And obviously things changed over the way, but I mean, that's a hell of a thing to get right before we go into pandemic,
Yeah. I have a lot of things that I could say with XFC. What I will say is I have a level of gratitude for them hiring me because I was hired 4 months into the pandemic. When everybody was closing, these guys opened and they hired me, and I was able to make money while I was able to stay home right as we had my first son. So, my first kid was born the day that the lockdown started. They said, you cannot leave your house. We were in the hospital. She just had him. 6 hours later, they changed every hospital policy, don't leave your house, stay in place order. So, we went into the hospital on a Thursday thinking I had to go back to work in a week. And then I didn't work a job again for 13 months. An hourly job. So those guys were when I was hired, they were awesome to work with. I was able to make money during a time when not many people were able to make money. So it's tough because I appreciate the opportunity I was given. I met some awesome people that I'm either working with still, could potentially work with in the future, or they're just friends, people I was able to reconnect with a couple people that I had worked with previously that we just kind of had a disconnect with, and it wasn't all bad, like it's. I know that the way that things unfolded this last event were unfortunate, but it's weird. It's weird because, like I said, I'm appreciative of the opportunity, but also the way things went down. I was not and am not okay with. So I was. It was tough because I was getting asked about it a lot, and I wasn't legally able to say what I wanted to say. So, that period is over with. So I can at least talk freely about it now. So it makes it a little easier to answer questions and explain things to people.
Well, I mean, I imagine that had to have been tough, especially being that when, like you mentioned, you've got previous relationships with guys like Kenny and Mondo and that are right in the thick of all this stuff, and you can't say anything because you're working with XFC. And, so for all the bullshit that went down, what really went down with that? Because you heard a million different stories. You saw everybody coming out with this person saying this, that person saying that. XFC's trying to cover their ass however they can do with that. So, like, from the inside, what was it looking like for you? And I mean, like, what do you feel like went down with that last event? Because I mean, we were actually headed, we were there at the last show. And then, like I said, to hear everything that came out of it, I mean, being around MMA as long as I have, it's not the first time I've heard of some crazy shit like that happening. But it's crazy to think when, like we mentioned, this is a promotion that's, up on a major network. You're doing all these things, doing these tryouts, all that stuff. And then you hear that this is the way that things played out. I mean, what was it like for you from the inside out? And what are your thoughts on what really went down with that?
Yeah, I mean, XFC had when they announced the return, there was quite a bit of hype that came out. Made some good signings. Kind of was building up a good name, and then as I kind of got more involved and was able to kind of see some of like the inner workings of the company, there was issues that were beyond repair as far as kind of like the upper management goes, just relationships between the people who were making decisions. And, the CFO passed away from COVID after 2 weeks after the first Michigan show we did, and I think it was August. So a lot of things just happened in such a short period of time. And, I think the vision was there from everybody. I think they all had different ways of how they wanted to get to where they wanted to go. And at the end of the day, there was relationships that were built and then torn down. There was personalities that were never, ever going to clash, and they tried to fake force that it was going to work, and it just wasn't going to work. There was problems from day one and red flags from day one. And when I finally got into the role that I did and I could see some of it, I already knew that things were not going to end well with the way they were going. So, the show in December, what went down was all the fighters, they got paid. Whatever their contract was, they all walked away that night with checks for what they were owed. None of the fighters received a ticket commission check the night of the fight, and they were never going to get one the night of the fight because we still have, we did all the sales online, so we have to wait a couple of days to get the reconcile from the Deltaplex. So nobody was ever going to get paid the night of, but nobody got paid for months. I think it was 3 months after the show, something like that. Some of the money started coming in. The event was a pretty big financial loss. Those guys put a lot of money into their production, their lighting, their sound. Like, those shows cost a lot of money, and it just the ticket sales, everything they didn't cover. So they took an L financially, and it took them a while to kind of get their finances in order. They've done that. They've paid people now. I don't know that I don't think anybody's really owed, not that I've heard of anyways, but I felt like a very high level of obligation to make sure everybody got paid, because even though I'm not the one that was responsible for paying, I still was the one that booked these guys on the card. And to have somebody that, you know, whether it was somebody was owed $400 or $3,000, you know, as you guys know, a lot of these fighters, this is what they're doing. This is what they're trying to do. Some of them don't have jobs. They just train. $500 to a kid that doesn't have a job right now is crucial, you know? So the fact that, you know, I was in contact with Steve multiple times a week, like, hey, we got to take care of this. We got to take care of this. And I know the things that fly around about what happened. I can put most of that to bed. They didn't just have money; they were sitting on not paying people. They legitimately didn't have the money to pay, so it took them a while to kind of get their finances in order. So, you know, they did that. They handled it. They probably didn't handle it the right way. I don't think Steve had personally apologized to anybody. I think he just kind of paid and then just kind of cut off communication with some people. So probably wasn't the best way to go about it, but, you know, everybody makes mistakes the way they do it. I'm at least happy that the fighters got paid. You know, there's definitely some outstanding stuff. He and I have had agreements of some things that are owed, and I still have not been fulfilled on any of that stuff. One thing I can say about him is that from the day that I've started working with them until, I mean, really now, aside from this last kind of outstanding thing he has with me, I've always been paid what I was owed. Always late, but always paid at least, you know. So it's easier for me to wait because, you know, I thankfully have another job, you know. I'm in a different position than some of these guys. Like some of these fighters, like I said, they just train, they don't have jobs. So that money needed to be paid to them immediately, and it wasn't. In my case, I can wait a little bit longer than most just because like I'm able to still work every day and make money that way. So, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, the situation was really unfortunate. I feel the pain of those guys because, like I said, I'm in the same boat as what they were. I'm owed, and you know, obviously, I'd love to have that paid up, but at the same time, like, things have not been perfect. But he's always followed through when it came to me. So, like I said, the situation sucked. Being involved with it sucked. I have mixed emotions on the company as a whole. But at the end of the day, like I said, I've always been taken care of, and I'm still hopeful that that's going to be the case.
That's got to be a tough.
I'm glad to see you bounce back on the other side of it all. But what I ask, you know, fighters, wrestlers, this on the show all the time when something doesn't necessarily work out their intention plan, I guess you could say. But what's it like to be kind of professionally tied? Unfortunately, you know, you're trying your best to move past this stuff, and here you are in interviews still having to answer these questions.
Yeah, I'm that part sucked. You know, because I wasn't able to answer a lot of questions at first. So, you know, I would see people like, you know, on Facebook posts like, oh, Frendo did a show and he didn't pay anybody. Like, okay, first of all, it wasn't my show, and second of all, the finances weren't mine. So, and I'm fortunate because I had guys like Bobby Nash and Kenny and Brett and Mondo. They all stood up and said no. Every time I ever fought for Matt, I've never had this happen. Like, I don't do that. I can't stand owing anybody money, whether it's a fighter, whether it's anybody. I can't do it. You know, it just leaves a crappy taste in my mouth, and I don't like that. So, you know, I've never had a situation like this happen with any of my events. All my people have always gotten paid what they were owed when they were owed. So it was tough because I couldn't respond to a lot of it. So, you know, I'd have some of these dickhead promoters that do shows in Michigan that would say all types of shit, you know, like I would get screenshots all the time of dude from WXC saying, oh, I told you Frendo was a fucking shithead. I'm like, it's not my fucking show. And I'm going to make sure these guys get paid one way or another. I always had a backup plan if it didn't work. If they didn't get paid, I always had a way for them to get paid. So that part was tough because I was associated, I gave guys that are irrelevant a chance to be relevant and say things online to get some attention. So that it sucked. It really did. I don't have a problem talking about it now because like I can be honest with you. I can tell you whatever the question is. I can just answer it now. I don't have to worry about walking on eggshells because of legalities. I don't have that anymore. So it's much easier to explain now, but yeah, 4 to 6 weeks ago, it was pretty rough because I would get messages daily about it. And I just kept saying like, I'm working on it. And it took entirely too long, but I'm happy that situation's over with. I'm trying to move past it as best as possible. But at the end of the day, there's going to be people that will hear my name or hear that name, and they're always going to associate the two. And that's the risk you take when you work with people that you're not super familiar with. Could go really well or it could go really bad. And it was with XFC, it was a little bit of both. Like I said, this situation my name's tied to, and there's been other situations that were awesome that my name was tied to, and I was able to meet some really powerful people and do some things in the industry and make some connections I never would have made without working with XFC. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. When it's my shows and stuff like that, I know wholeheartedly, and the fighters do as well, that this will never be an issue with me. So it sucks that it happened, but I'm couldn't be more excited that this is a lights out show and I get to control this stuff because it's not going to happen again. So.
Well, now that, I mean, and that was we had a couple people in the comments were asking that in the questions, but I mean, is it safe to say at this point that you're completely separate? Are you completely separate now from XFC, or are you still got some stuff to tie up with them? Or are you completely able to do what you want to do as far as, fight promotion, matchmaking, whatever that is?
Yeah, I can do what I want. I don't have a contract with them. I signed a 1-year contract at the end of, I think it was October of 2020. So my contract technically expired the month before we did the last XFC show. So I just kind of worked on a handshake agreement with that. So no, I'm not contractually obligated to anybody. I'm just, like I said, I'm doing lights out. I know they're getting ready to try and retool and put some things together. So I don't know exactly what the plan is for them, but right now I'm doing lights out. I don't really have too much of a plan. Well, I've got some ideas of what I might do. I just don't have like a concrete plan of what's going to happen after June 25th yet. So still working those things out. But yeah, right now, like I said, I'm not contractually obligated to do anything.
Gotcha. Well, the only other thing I really wanted to ask with that is people that have been watching our show for a while, Darren Crookshank's a past guest of this show as well, and he talked at length with what all of us know about in the Michigan scene with Brett and him when they went to go fight with Tora and all that. We've seen this on the regional scene. It's nothing that's new. Shit happens. But what do you think, having been involved with all that stuff, like what do you think causes shit like that? Do you think it's just bad management? Do you think it's always like a perfect storm of things? But like, as we know in the Tora situation, I mean, people went years with it after that fight and that people weren't getting paid. Like, how the hell does stuff like that happen in a time like 2022 when you've got people watching from all over the world, all over the country, and we still see stuff like this end up having to fall through?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. It's missed opportunities. Those guys being on Fox, the missed opportunity was advertisement, sponsors. If you're on a national broadcast like that, you have to be bringing in big money on sponsorship, at TV advertisement. They weren't doing it, unfortunately. That was always something like, I don't know. You got to have a company or people that are really well connected to bring in the revenue you need for stuff like that. getting corporate sponsors should not have been a problem at all with that type of platform. And unfortunately they didn't do that. So it was stuff like that. It was kind of budget mismanagement of things of, okay, here's what our budget is. And then, as if I get closer, oh, we need new lighting, new sound. I want this, I want that. So it was a lot of things of not staying inside the budget. It was horrible money management of what's being, ticket money being spent, investment money, like things like that, just not being allocated to the right things at the right time. So it was a snowball effect of all types of stuff. There was things that were coming up that literally should never come up. So there was a multiple things. It's hard to really pinpoint one. The tricky situation with this last fight was everybody got paid their fight purses. So their show and win money, they were all paid. With the ticket sales not being paid, Michigan does not legally allow you to tie in ticket sales in a contract that gets committed to the state. They don't, the state will not allow that. So XFC didn't put in the contract. When I do lights out, I don't put in my contract either. I'll usually do a separate ticket sale agreement because I print tickets for fighters to sell. With them doing it all online, they didn't have a separate ticket sale agreement. So they were all handshake agreements. So legally, there wasn't anything that anybody really could do. I mean, there's no.
It was just he said, she said.
Yeah, there's nothing. So that part sucked because I think that delayed things a little bit more. Had there been contracts in place, I think, fighters could have attacked the bond and would have got paid sooner and things like that. But, until unfortunately it took some social media slandering for anything to happen, which, like, again, shouldn't have happened like that. And yeah, I don't know, when things like this happen with companies not paying, the biggest thing is probably money mismanagement, but in their case, like I said, it's a combination of so many things. The advertisement thing was probably the biggest killer. Like I said, with that national broadcast, you should be pulling in good money on sponsors, and they didn't have like any of them. So that part was pretty rough. But in the case of Tora, I don't really know too much about that, but I know in this case, it was a combination of 10 different things of why they couldn't pull it off.
I guess before we jump off that subject and on to further topics, my last real question involving XFC is, what do you know kind of what went down with the whole publicly traded thing and not keeping up with the stock exchange and stuff? Because I feel like that was kind of the final straw. Behind the scenes and stuff, to your point, a lot of the fighters not necessarily receiving just compensation and stuff for tickets and stuff. That's a huge deal. But once it kind of came to the forefront that, hey, investors and stuff in this isn't, it's not working out on their end either, that's when it seemed like the building was officially on fire at that moment, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So the stock thing is like pretty foreign to me just because I don't know a ton of like the actual terminology and stuff. What I do know was that, their audits and their filings never went well. I don't know if it's incompetence on the people that they hired to do it. That part I don't really know too much about. What I do know was that they didn't fulfill what they needed to fulfill in terms of keeping up with their filings. I think right now their stock is in, I believe it's called expert market. Like you can't even trade it. It's like about to be delisted maybe. So I know that they're trying to work some things out with that to fix that. I don't really know everything that's happened with that side of it. I wasn't really ever too much involved in any of that stuff. I would always ask questions about it because, part of my deal was I was getting stock as a signing bonus for when I signed my contract with them. So when my contract was up, I had a bigger interest in it because I couldn't trade it for a year anyways. That was part of the deal, is I couldn't do anything with the stocks I was given for a year. So I tried to learn more about it the last couple of months I worked with them because I probably should know how to do that shit anyways, and I really don't. So
I think that's all of us. Don't worry.
yeah, I don't know any of this stuff.
I didn't know shit about crypto before all this shit, dude. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Man, like the only thing I've ever done with anything like that was I fucked around with Dogecoin when it first came out. Like I didn't
Good old Dogecoin.
Yeah, I've never done anything with stocks. So like when this all was happening, I got asked all the time, and like I would ask questions with the people that were doing this shit with these companies just to try and like help people out, because I don't, you know what I'm saying, I don't know anything about it. So the stock part, like I said, what I do know is that their filings were late quite a bit. I know they fired and hired a couple of different firms to try and do their audits and stuff. So I think it's a combination of the people involved weren't doing their job. I think at the end of the day, when you look at their numbers of what their revenues are, what their costs were, you know, to an investor, definitely not appealing at all. You know, they were losing money pretty heavily. So I think that's, you know, I don't know anything about it, but what I do know and could read, you know, I probably wouldn't have been pumped about putting a bunch of money into it either. So I think at the end of the day that, you know, I think there was a lot of things that were going wrong with that. So the last thing I had heard was that they were doing some things with a new firm. They had a legal team in place that was taking care of it. So I know they're still actively trying to fix that situation. So I don't know. I mean, it's in my head after everything that happened, you would think, oh, these guys will probably just pack it up and go. And it doesn't seem like they're doing that. I think they're trying to make some things happen. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. You know, I haven't been in communication too much with that, so I don't know what the latest is really, but I know they're working on things. And like I said, the last I had heard, they were getting ready to announce a couple things in terms of doing future shows and stuff. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Hey, man, like I said, I got nothing bad to say as far as the promotion themselves, at least with my dealings with them. They were cool with us, too. But like I said, everybody knows what was in the news. It was something that we had to bring up and had to see what your thoughts were, because obviously you were in a hell of a spot with it. The last question I guess we got from in the comments, you know, Michael asking again, would you ever be willing to work with them in the future should they get back up and start running fights again?
It would have to be a lot different. I would have to. There would be things I would like require. I would want to see the things with the financials. You know, I would want to know. You know, there was a few staff members that they definitely would need to get rid of and bring on in return. So I don't know. I've learned in this business to really never say never, but there would have to be a lot of changes made, and if they're going to make those changes, then you know, like I said, I would never say never, but I'm in like a weird spot with this fight game, because at the end of the day, I love it, you know, I really do. But I was just telling my wife a couple of days ago, like my motivation level has been really low, and I don't know if it's just because it's all hitting me that, you know, the show's getting close and I'm just having like this weird anxiety, like I'm forgetting something, I need to do something, and I don't know what it is. It's a combination of things are happening, and I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I told her, like, don't ever let me do this again. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I want this to be my last one. Let's do one more at the Deltaplex and then ride off. And I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. To be honest, I'm either going to stop. I'm going to stop doing them, or I'm going to buckle down and do, 2 or 3 more this year. And then, I had been working on a couple of pretty big things in terms of broadcasting before COVID hit. So I might try and pick those back up and see what I really can do with it. I'm just in a weird spot where, like, if this was the last show I ever did, then I'm content with it. Like, I've done some cool things in the sport. I've met some awesome people, helped people get to where they want to go. I've made some money. I've lost some money. Like, at the end of the day, like, I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I also have a petty bone in my body, and I want to come to Detroit. I want to do a show or two in Detroit this year. I I'm sick of hearing some fellow industry members run their mouths, and they could leave me alone and I'd probably go away. But it doesn't seem like that's the route they want to go. So I might be coming to your guys' neck of the woods soon. And
I like that.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
You love to see it, and your friends from Knockouts and Three Counts would be more than happy to help spread the word of said show if that ever seems to.
How many times, Kyle, have I been saying, man, we need to see more of these promotions running in the Metro Detroit area?
To be fair, Corey, you got on the show with us when we were in the middle of a damn pandemic.
Yeah,
my part of the we
true.
has been around
Very
this
true.
shit since I was like
Very
13.
true,
So
but-
when I got around this shit, you had a lot of promotions that most people around Michigan might know that no longer exist, like XCC. King of the Cage was around here a lot more. There was shows every fucking weekend. Pandemic changed a lot of that. But let's hope now that we're starting to get out of this pandemic that we could see some fights. But we've talked a little bit about Lights Out. We've talked about XFC. We've talked about a lot about money. But if you guys didn't already do so with your taxes, I know all of you haven't because I work at the post office. Make sure you hit up our friends G3 Payroll and Tax. Make sure you tell them Knockouts 3 Counts sent you. Tell them we sent you, Jack. What up, though? The link for all their stuff is in the description. Well, we were talking about your parlays. NBA finals are going. I am going to be watching that as soon as we get off the air here. But the UFC is going down this weekend too, and they've got a hell of a card lined up for them too. And some of those names that you mentioned with Joaquin Buckley, you've got the main event of this. You've got the main event with Cater and Emmett. You've got Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon's going to happen. Shout out to our buddy Chris of Last Call, who just had Tim Means on. He's taking on Kevin Holland. And dude, it's going to be a little bit of a sleeper this weekend with the UFC. How you feeling about that card, bro?
Yeah, like they're putting on a good card, and Cody Stamann fights as well. So
past guest of the show.
Yeah, I'll definitely be tuned in. Joaquin Buckley, one of the craziest knockouts of all time. It seems like with the UFC, I think some of these cards that don't really get too much hype and too much love actually end up being the sleeper cards.
Agreed.
I think UFC's in a weird spot too with, you got to think like their biggest stars, right? Diaz is kind of inactive right now. Connor's injured. Masvidal's facing criminal charges for bum rushing Colby in a fucking nightclub. Like their biggest guys, they're kind of MIA right now. So they're in a position where, kind of how I mentioned, like building up these amateurs, they're in a position where they got to build these next stars up. So they're doing so many shows every year, or every month, every weekend there's a show. So some of these guys aren't household names, but they're absolute fucking killers. So I think this is kind of going to be a card similar. Like, you got your names where you know what you're going to get from some of these guys, but it's hard for me to bet on these fights because a lot of these guys, like, they're so unpredictable and a lot of people don't know who they are yet, and that it's crazy. The level of competition in the UFC is obviously second to none. So every time they do a card, I try and check it out. I'm not going to be able to check this one out. Unfortunately, I'm going to be working all day, and then I got a couple of things to take care of after. So I'm probably going to miss most of it, but I will try and catch Cody's fight at least at work. I'm going to pop it on in the back and hopefully see a quick finish so I don't get in too much trouble for messing off at work, but we'll see.
As a fight degenerate fan like myself that's just been watching this shit for entirely too many fights for entirely too long, that Donald Cerrone, Joe Lozon co-main event, that alone is just worth watching the replay back. I mean, even if you are busy on the Saturday, you're going to have to get back on it on a Sunday and watch that one.
Yeah. I've met Donald before. He's an awesome guy too. So, I think he probably, he loses this fight, he's probably retiring. And honestly, maybe he retires if he wins. I don't know. I mean, the dude's a legend. So anytime that you can still catch these guys in action, you definitely got to check it out. So if I do miss it, I'm going to have to check the replay out because I always try and support that guy when he fights.
I'm definitely with you on that one. Kathy mentions Cody. How do you see this fight playing out with Cody? He's taking on Eddie Wineland. I mean, what are your thoughts on your relationship with Cody? We mentioned earlier in the show, you booked a lot of his fights coming up before he went to the UFC. And I mean, he's done his thing in the UFC as well. Like I said, we're big fans of him, past guests of the show as well. But how do you see this fight playing out, and what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think Cody wins the fight. Cody hasn't been a finisher in the UFC, but I really think he gets the finish here. He's fighting Eddie Wineland at the right time of his career. He's in a point too where his back's against the wall. The streak he's on. I think he knows he probably can't really afford any more losses in the UFC if he's trying to stick around there. So, I think Cody gets the finish. I really see it going that way. I don't think at this point of his career, I don't think Eddie is gonna. I don't think he poses as much of a threat as a lot of those other guys in the division do to Cody. So I think this is a great fight for Cody. I think this gets him back on track. I think he picks up a win. I think he gets. I think he gets the finish here. So I feel really good about it. I love Cody. What he's done for Michigan MMA as a whole. Obviously there was guys from Michigan in the UFC before him, but when he got in, it kind of seemed like the floodgates opened a little bit. Jamal got in pretty shortly after. Then you guys got like Chaos Williams, Brundage, England, Daquan, all these guys, it was like Cody got in, and then all of a sudden there was more eyes on Michigan as a whole. I was able to give some legitimacy with my promotion as well, with the backing of Cody, just speaking positively about it. With all these guys that have moved on now, they've all been very supportive of me. So, I owe a lot to all those guys. And Cody, like I said, was kind of like, that was my original baby. That was the golden child. We called him the King of Grand Rapids. And anytime we did a show, like, the first person we called was like, hey, if Cody's not available, we might not do the show. So let's see if he'll do it first, because he's such a massive draw in this area. So, he's had some really good success. But I know that if you asked him right now, he would tell you he's not happy with where his career is at. And he's not just one of those guys that's like, no, I got there, I was ranked. I think he was like 7 or 8 or 9 or something at one point in the world. Like he's not satisfied with that.
He was in the top 10.
Yeah, he was definitely itching that top 5. He was very close.
Yeah, that fight with Aljamain, he wins that. He's looking at maybe one more, and then he'd be in that title talk. And I know that burns him that happens. So he's not happy with where he's at, and I know that he's going to come out and perform really well. He's going to get the win, and then he'll be on to bigger things.
That was actually the last fight that we had Cody on for, and it was funny because boy, was Aljamain not a big fan of us after he found out after Cody came in. Hot damn. This dude messaged us back and was like, man, we know your fans is. I was like, man, you can't be mad at somebody for supporting the hometown boy. And I mean, I know Cody a little bit personally. I just saw him out at Extreme Couture, not this past trip to Vegas, but when I went out there in August for SummerSlam and went and trained out there at XC. So you can't be mad at that, bro.
No, I know personally, I was a huge Aljamain fan, and I remember the exact story Kyle's talking about. I was pressing Kyle hard behind the scenes. I'm like, that would be great if we had Aljo on. We could compare their, back and forth and everything. And we got shut down so hard. I mean, I just got pissed. Oh man! And I'm like, all right, well, I still like Aljo. And then to see where he's made himself into is like still great, but it's like, man,
they can't get that, man. Like even with this card, right? Like when I offered Mondo's opponent the fight, I said, look, man, I fucking love Mondo. Okay, like I have my son call him Uncle Mondo. I love the dude, but at the end of the day, on June 25th. I want the best fighter to win. So if you're the better fighter than Mondo, then I want you to win the fight. Like even bringing guys in from out of state, like they know that the Michigan guy, that's the guy, right? That's the hometown guy. That's the guy that sells the tickets. That's the promoter's guy. Like it's not a secret. But at the end of the day, like if you're a better fighter than him, then I want you to win the fight. I want to put the best fight possible on, and I want that guy to win the fight. So when I see Michigan guys fighting guys from out of state, I generally am like, I'm rooting for the guy from Michigan. I know them. I want them to do well. But at the end of the day, like if they're not the better fighter in that matchup, then it is what it is. It wasn't your day. Go home, get better, and come back at them. So those guys can't get too mad at you guys for rooting for the hometown guy.
I just want to put this out for the record. You know, if I was that big of a hater of Aljamain Sterling, I would not have won money when I was sitting in the tattoo chair in Jacksonville having to have my brother-in-law make my parlay bet, and I won off of that DQ and won $150 of my $175 tattoo while I was sitting there in the damn chair. Shout out to past guests of the show, the American Kaiju Lindsay Snow. Plenty of good stories with her from our trip to WrestleMania in Texas. And, yeah, all of y'all that were checking out that OnlyFans and stuff, I'm not mad at you. But with that being said, dude, this UFC card, how do you like the main event, dude? Calvin Kattar's got to come back and get him a big dub. Josh Emmett is not a scrub for anybody to be stepping into the cage with. I feel like this fight's got fireworks written all over it.
Yeah. Two super exciting guys that you know, put on a show every time they fight. You know, Calvin, I think, I don't know. It's really hard. That's why I like the fight so much too, though, is that it's really hard to pick a winner. Some of the main events in the UFC as of late, I've been able to pretty much, you know, I know who's winning the fight, or I have at least a really good idea of it. And this one, it's like,
except the Carla fight.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect that. You know,
nobody did, bro.
The fight was horrible, right? I mean, it was a really boring fight. But hey, you can't make every single fight the most exciting fight of your life. Like at the end of the day, you put on an exciting fight and you lose, you get one check. You put on a boring ass fight, you win, you get two checks. So
it's one of the.
Everybody's got a price, like the $1 Million Man, bro.
Hey, you win the fight, you get two checks. That's what it is. So
it's one of the rarest occasions in fighting when somebody clearly shows that they are the better fighter in every aspect of the game that was displayed. And I felt like that was the case for Rose in that fight. She was able to, every time she was taken down, she was able to reverse position immediately. Whenever she wanted to take down, she was able to implement her wrestling without issue. And then whenever she was actually striking, she was the better striker. But that being said, even though she was clearly the better, more well-rounded fighter in every aspect of the game, you could not do anything but score it for Esparza just because Rose didn't do anything the whole fight. So it's just like, yeah, that was the biggest head scratcher I've seen in a long time right there.
Yeah, it was a very weird fight. I wish I would have put money on Carla, and usually in situations like that, I will. Like I remember, I won $600 on I can't remember her name at the moment. The girl that beat Nunes,
Pena.
Oh my god, yeah. She was a plus 1,600 or something like that. I threw $50 on her. I'm like, fuck it. If she wins, I'm gonna win $800. Like there's situations like that where if I see a line like that, sometimes I'll just throw money on it to see if it happens.
Do that too.
I wish I would have, because Carla was a very heavy underdog. So
I know.
Well,
I tried to, and I think when I went to put in my bet, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm 100% honest, if I remember right, I went back and forth on whether I was going to do the shit. And then by the time I went to go put it in, for some reason, it wouldn't let me put in my bet. And then she won. And if I remember yelling at the fucking TV.
Yeah, I remember. We were watching the fights together. I remember.
Yeah,
but
that was brutal.
Since we're digging back a little bit and we're talking about women's fights, what was your thoughts on this last weekend's fight with Valentina and Talia Santos? Did you
Who
think
won?
that she was able to? Do you think she got that decision victory over Valentina? What's your thoughts on that one?
So I didn't get to watch it live, but I watched the replay, and Valentina lost that fight.
Damn it! That's the third person in a row. Devin was with me last night. We watched the fight last night. I watched it for a second time last night. I said the same thing that I said when we watched it the first time. Devin said that he thought she won it too. Bobby Wambacher, who was on with us Tuesday, said he thought Valentina won it. But damn it, that's 3 out of 4 now that have said Valentina lost that fight. All I'm saying, okay, now let me ask you this. So he asked you that. Where do you see Talia Santos ending up after this? Like, what? My thing is, dude, if she doesn't at least get like a top 3 fight whenever her orbital bone heals, I'm pissed because nobody's done that to Valentina in a long time.
Yeah, I would honestly, I think she either gets an immediate rematch or she maybe sits out a fight. Maybe Valentina fights somebody else and then she pops in to fight the winner. Depending on how long it takes her to heal. That division, you're getting to a point where Valentina's going to be running through girls second and third time, and that's not what you want, So at the same time, though, too, I think Valentina, and not to take anything away from the fight or Santos' performance, but I think I don't want to say she's bored, but you see that some of these people who like look at Pena, she Nunes, she defended that belt how many times, right? She's a champ for how long, and then she runs into somebody who's fucking hungry, and she just didn't have it. She didn't, and I think Valentina, not that she didn't have it, but I don't know. I mean, you do something for so long. I mean, how do you keep your motivation like that? So I don't know. It's tough to say, but I think she lost that fight. I think she really did. I think she lost the fight, and she should count her blessings that went her way. Because I think
you notice she wasn't talking a whole lot of shit when they did that post-fight interview, because I think she knew, even if she thought she won, she knew that she won by the skin of her fucking teeth.
Yeah, razor close. Like I said, I think she lost, but I don't know. It's one of those decisions where I think also, too, you got to take the emotion out of it, because I think a lot of us just wanted her to lose because the fight was so good and, her opponent fought so well that I think people just kind of mostly wanted to see it go the opposite way. So I don't know. I think she got a little lucky, though.
Well, it was a bit of the effect where, like, everybody brought up the singular round against her versus Jennifer Maia, where Jennifer Maia was able to take her down and win this individual round against her. And that was the big talking point is, one person was able to win one round. And in this fight, she looked a lot more human, man. I don't know if it was to your point where she just lacked a bit of motivation going into the fight or didn't necessarily look at her opponent's strengths maybe as much as she should have. And she really, I feel like going into the next fight, if her and her coaches are smart, which she's shown many times in the past to be a very high IQ fighter, I feel like Talia Santos isn't going to have very much of a chance at going into this next fight, because I feel like a lot of the issues were Valentina was putting herself in bad positions, man, like going for that headlock throw and stuff like that, and ending up on bottom, I believe on 2 or 3 separate occasions. She really put herself in just some bad predicaments through her own actions. It wasn't necessarily always Talia Santos implementing that. So I feel like if they do run this fight back, I think we're going to see a different version. I think Valentina's going to clean up a little bit of the issues from the first fight. But that being said,
Who else has done that besides Nunez?
Yeah,
I'll wait.
And even Nunez, if you look at the Nunez fights, because the way that they
exactly, I'll wait.
It wasn't the same. It wasn't the same as that, and they were more arguable in Valentina's favor, especially that second one, where it was mostly a striking battle and stuff like that, where you could say, "Hey, Valentina won these." But I talk about it all the time on the podcast. Watch the Weasels breakdown. He does an amazing breakdown on YouTube of who wins what rounds based on the criteria that's presented to these judges. He breaks down both the first and the second because they were the closest rounds. And watch the video, but he sides with Valentina in the second. So
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, before oh shit, my bad, dude. The thing.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
No, all I was going to say is, we've been talking, and as Corey likes to always say on the show, we've been balls deep in MMA. As most people know who watch this show, we also cover a little bit of the wrestling. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, have you gotten to keep up with anything that's been going on in the pro wrestling world lately?
I have. I've been following. I've been following.
See,
what's going
you like
on.
that shit-eating grin?
Yeah,
Peep
yeah.
the shirt.
I like it, man. I haven't been able to watch AEW like at all. I've only caught a couple episodes, and I like the product. It's a nice change of pace from kind of like the PG era going on. So it seems pretty cool. I've been following the Sasha Banks and Naomi situation.
What are your thoughts with that?
Do
you think they're really going to let her go, or do you think it could be something that eventually gets worked around? I mean, it's wrestling we're talking about, but what do you think? Do you think that there's really any chance that they let her go, especially with like the Mandalorian stuff and all that?
Yeah, I think she is. I think she's going to be. I think she's going to be done. I think she's in a position now financially where she doesn't have to do what she's done earlier in her career. Where it just kind of takes the shitty booking she gets, or takes like just kind of what they throw at her. She's got like that viral clip of her on Steve Austin's show where she talks about how she eats steak now with vegetables, and like she eats steak like Vince McMahon does. And financially she'll probably go to AEW, or she'll do some more acting stuff. She's set for life. I mean, she doesn't have anything to worry about. So I feel it in one sense, if whatever the case really was, I think maybe could have handled it different, but at the same time, like if you're set like that and there's something going on that you really don't agree with, and you got to voice your opinion, and you got the money to back it up, that, hey, if it goes wrong, it is what it is. I think she did what she needed to do. So I do think she's going to be gone. I do. Weirdly enough, I actually have a buddy that is related to Naomi. I just, like she hasn't been like the biggest of stars. So like, I've never really, like she's a good talent, but I've just never really kept up on her too much because she's not really ever in the main event scene too much. I asked him what the situation was, and she's been like very quiet about it to them even as well. But I think that he's indicated that she's for sure not ever coming back. So I would assume Sasha's probably the same way. So I think they probably know too in that business. You never say never, but I think probably until Vince is gone and John Laurinaitis is gone, I feel like there's probably a lot of people at the top that once those guys go, you'll probably get people like Sasha. If somehow Stephanie is back involved and Triple H is involved, those guys through the NXT program obviously have worked with her for a long time. So you'll probably get a lot of those people that are either got fired, let go, or just decided to walk. You'll probably get a lot of those guys that come back. But it's weird. I've been trying to follow the Vince thing too, with the hush money and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know why anybody's surprised. I mean, this dude's had like sexual allegations against him since the fucking 70s. So I don't know.
He literally talked about his $1 billion grapefruits all over TV.
Man,
you're telling me Vince McMahon's trying to bang women, huh?
Right. It's like,
go figure. It's like Hugh Hefner and Playmates. Crazy. Good Lord.
Guys,
that's insane.
This is somebody who dropped the N-word in a live TV promo with Booker T before. This is somebody who wanted to create a storyline with his daughter where he ended up being the father of her child. And like,
what about where they abducted his daughter and lifted her up on a fucking cross?
Yeah, and man, he had a bit once where he acted like his wife Linda had a stroke, and she just sat there and watched him make out with Trish Stratus. And it's like,
yep,
you guys are surprised this guy paid somebody to shut the fuck up about having an affair with her? Like, this is probably what this dude's gonna do in his whole life, like he's got fuck you money, so he doesn't, it does nothing to him. So I don't know. I feel like, I've seen a couple of the female wrestlers, like, Nia Jackson, a couple others that are no longer there. Mickey James have made some comments now that this article has went live. And just, like even AEW, I can't remember the girl's name. She dropped a bit of, these old perverted men that were, like in charge. And I feel like these guys have been doing this forever. So I was reading it, and at first I was like, wow, I mean, that's a lot of money. I'm surprised he paid somebody that much money, but I was not surprised at all to see that this guy has hush money on the line of paying somebody he had an affair with. Like, that seems like that's probably a normal Vince McMahon thing at this point.
Yeah,
You're not wrong, dude.
To your point, the move does not seem unprecedented whatsoever, but the amount, I was like, okay, damn, she must have did something pretty good. Or
Not to mention, it was reported first by the Wall Street Journal. Like, that was the thing that got me at first. I'm like, the fact that the first article I've heard or seen about this is from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about wrestling media broke this out. Like, the fucking Wall Street Journal's talking about it. I'm like, oh shit. Here we go. First, we're talking about people walking out. Now Vince is getting caught out for his extracurriculars, man. It's like the Attitude Era is breaking its way out into real life. But, dude, Frendo, I appreciate you coming on the show, dude. I'm very much looking forward to getting down to Grand Rapids and checking out these fights and seeing some of our past guests of the show do work inside that cage, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Maybe we can do a recap after.
Hell yeah!
Try, and I'm gonna do the show and then enjoy the summer with my family. My wife is not super pumped that we're in the process of buying and selling a house right now at the same time. So, it's a lot of shit going on that she's not the most happy that I'm doing a show at the moment. So we're going to get through Saturday and we're going to have a good time. And then I'm going to take some time and just kind of ponder the future and see what comes next with us.
Well, dude, whatever it is that comes next, dude, Knockouts and 3 Counts is looking forward to seeing it. Like I said, dude, I'm looking forward to being down there again, dude. It's going to be a good time. For those of you who have been watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because even though it may or may not have sunk me financially, I might be walking through a forbidden door in Chicago next weekend. And so you already know what happens when I tend to go to other states. You never know what happens on the other side of that camera. So all the more reason you need to hit subscribe, hit the like button, share all that shit. And until next week and in the in-between time, peace.